Have you ever felt like someone was watching you, even when you were sure no one was around? Imagine this, you're working alone at the office, late at night. The room that used to feel normal suddenly becomes too quiet, too silent. Then, you hear footsteps, but you know you're the only one there. What would you do? Run, or stay? Tonight, I'm going to take you into a real nightmare, where an employee finds themselves trapped in the office with a mysterious woman with a disfigured face. This is the terrifying story, Trapped with a Ghost in My Office. Have you ever felt something strange, but you couldn't explain it? That's what I felt that night, in the office that was supposed to be empty. I work for a small company, and my job often requires me to work late alone at the office. That night, the clock struck 11, but my work wasn't done yet. The office had been silent for 2 hours, and I thought I was the only one left. But for some reason, unease started to creep into my mind. There was something odd about the silence, like someone or something was watching me from a distance. Then, I heard it, the soft sound of footsteps echoing in the corridor. At first, I thought it was just the cleaning staff. But the footsteps, they sounded wrong. Uneven, as if someone was dragging their feet. I turned around, but no one was there. The office was empty, or at least I thought it was. My heart began to race. As I tried to focus back on my computer screen, the footsteps suddenly disappeared. Silence, but a silence that was too still, too eerie. My fingers froze on the keyboard. I stared at the monitor, but my mind was no longer on my work. I started to feel like I wasn't alone in the room anymore. The footsteps were gone, but only for a moment. Not long after, I heard a more disturbing sound, the slow creak of a door opening, followed by a high-pitched squeak from the hinges. The sound came from the copy room, right next to my office. I knew I was alone, and no one else should have been in the office at this hour. My hands trembled as I stood and walked toward the room, hoping it was just my imagination. When I opened the door to the copy room, it was empty, as it should be. But the door, which had been firmly shut, was now halfway open. I tried to calm myself, thinking that maybe a draft had somehow opened the door. But the windows were securely locked, as always. My mind tried to come up with logical explanations, but the more I tried, the less sense everything made. Back at my desk, I sat down, still feeling uneasy. I stared at the monitor, trying to finish my work as quickly as possible. However, when I looked closely at the screen, I saw it. A shadow. A long, dark shadow standing behind me. I froze. I couldn't move. I could only stare at the shadow, terrified, hoping it was just a reflection of something in the room. But then, the shadow moved. Slowly, it came closer, inching toward me. I turned my head quickly, but there was nothing behind me. The room was empty, but I knew what I saw. Or at least, I thought I did. My heart was pounding faster, and cold sweat dripped down my forehead. I could no longer ignore the sense of dread that kept tightening its grip on my mind. After a while of trying to continue my work, I couldn't hold back the urge to go to the bathroom. I walked the long corridor toward the restroom. Every step felt heavier, like something was pulling me back. Once inside, I splashed some water on my face, trying to calm down. But as I looked into the mirror, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Behind me, there was a woman with long hair and a disfigured face. Her eyes were hollow, her skin torn, and blood was dripping from the wounds on her face. I turned around quickly, but the figure was gone. There was no one behind me, only my reflection staring back at me, pale and terrified. My gut told me I wasn't really alone in this place. Something was watching, waiting. I rushed back to my desk, this time moving much faster. I couldn't explain what I had just seen, but I knew something was terribly wrong. I had to finish my work and leave this office as soon as possible. But as I sat down, my computer suddenly shut off by itself. The monitor went black, and the room fell back into an unsettling silence. I tried turning it on again, but the power button didn't respond. While I was fumbling with it, the screen suddenly flickered back to life. But this time, it wasn't my desktop display. On the screen, there was a clear image of the woman I had seen in the mirror. She was getting closer, inching towards me, as if stepping out from the screen. Suddenly, my phone rang, startling me. An unknown number flashed on the screen. I hesitated, but my trembling fingers answered the call anyway. As I put the phone to my ear, there was no sound except for shallow, broken breathing. "Hello?" I asked, my voice shaking. No answer, just breathing, growing louder and more intense, as if someone was standing right next to me, very close. I quickly hung up and turned off my phone. My hands were shaking, and I knew I had to get out of here before something worse happened. I decided to leave the office. I didn't care if my work was unfinished. I couldn't stay here any longer. I hurried toward the elevator. When the doors opened, I felt an odd cold breeze coming from inside. But I didn't care. I stepped in and pressed the button for the ground floor. As the doors began to close, I heard a faint sound, crying. Slowly, I turned my head, and in the corner of the elevator, there she was again. The woman with the long hair and disfigured face, standing still, staring at me with her hollow eyes. Panicking, I pressed all the buttons in the elevator, hoping the doors would open quickly. When they finally did, I bolted out, running down the hall toward the exit. But I stopped in my tracks when I heard the sound of footsteps behind me. I turned, and there she was, the woman, walking slowly towards me, dragging her feet, her disfigured face grinning grotesquely. I ran as fast as I could, but every time I looked back, she was getting closer. I reached the exit door, but it was locked. Impossible. I was certain this door was never locked while I was inside. I tried turning the handle, but it wouldn't budge. My heart raced as I heard the footsteps growing nearer from behind. When I looked back, the woman was already at the end of the hallway. Her face was even more mangled, fresh blood dripping from her wounds. I screamed, hoping someone would hear, but there was no response. I was trapped here with her. With the last of my strength, I ran back to my desk, hoping to find something to defend myself. But when I reached it, everything fell silent. No more footsteps, no more breathing. I thought it was over until I felt something cold on my shoulder. Slowly, I turned my head, and there, right beside me, was her face, disfigured, grinning widely. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. There was only darkness and the icy breath against my ear. And so, just when you think it's all over, she appears again. That woman, with her disfigured face, getting closer and closer. Is this just a nightmare, or is it a reality you can't escape? What if she shows up at your workplace? Remember, maybe tonight, you're not really alone. Make sure to watch the next horror story, and always stay alert, because you never know what's lurking in the darkness.